Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Inclusion and Diversity evening. What we had hoped is that you could all be with us and we'd be sharing our chats and conversations together as a big group. And I feel bored of saying that, unfortunately, COVID restrictions have yet again scuppered all of our plans. My personal opinion is that this kind of meeting would have been much better face-to-face with people meeting and being able to put names to faces, but we will aim to do that in our next meeting after Christmas, hopefully. So I thought it was worth us just using this opportunity before Christmas just to highlight what we're intending to do with this group and how we see it working. It is very much an ergonomic plan, so it's very much about what you want to add to it as much as where we're heading. So tonight I just want to give you a little bit of a flavour of where we see inclusion and diversity within school and what we've already done along the way. There are some key people involved in this team, and Miss Parks and Miss Doherty, so Miss Parks from the boys and Miss Doherty from the girls, are spearheading this for both the preps, but Mr. Williams and myself, Mrs. Johnson, Mrs. Wood, who heads up the SEN department for both schools, are very much involved, and actually the whole staff body are very much involved. It is in our 3-year strategy plan, so everybody is going for the same destination. So what I wanted to start with, and I'm imagining the chat box may get impacted hugely, so I just want to already at the outset say we will try to answer some of the questions at the end. We may not get to that, and if we don't, please put your questions into the email that we're going to give you at the end of the presentation. I wanted to start with an incredible quote which I think sets us aside for a really good starting point for where we are today with our children. Many things can wait. Children cannot. Today, their bones are being formed, their blood is being made, their senses are being developed. To them, we can't say tomorrow. Their name is today. And Gabriela Mistral was born in the late 1800s, and actually there was never a more appropriate time than now for this quote to make great sense post-COVID, but also in the ever-changing world that we're part of. We've got a few photos there just welcoming. You can see the boys and the girls. One of the things that we haven't been able to do, and we talked to you about in our presentations and perspective tours, is about the mixing. And obviously we've been limited with that post-COVID, but we are trying to get back with a vengeance. I'm hoping that post-Christmas, anybody that's going to have COVID has already had it, and we will be able to do our play dates and our times and activities together. But you can see that actually separately we have also been doing quite a lot of work together. First of all, I just kind of wanted you to have a think about what equality and diversity and inclusion really means to you. I think one of the things, it's definitely the buzz at the moment, and there's lots of conversations going on in the corporate world. There's lots of policies being written, and actually the Equality Act and the Inclusion and Diversion Act were based many years ago now. We started many years ago, and we're still using the Act from 12 years ago. So yes, if you think back to 2 years ago, we are drastically changed as a nation than we were pre-COVID. And I think the definition there of diversity being the state of being diverse, so considerable diversity, equality and diversity should be supported for its own sake. And I think there that for us kind of encapsulates where we're coming from, that absolutely everything needs to be. We talk to the boys a lot about making sure they are stepping into each other's shoes, and I know the girls have done exactly the same when they've been talking in assemblies and in their PSHE lessons about actually put yourself in someone else's position and how is it that we feel. And I think that is about the diverse group, but also about including. It's really easy for us, let's be honest, there's not one of us in this room, I was about to say, well actually there's only Miss Parks and I in this room, so that's so difficult. There's not many of us here tonight who can honestly, hand on heart, say that at some point in your life you have been biased or prejudiced against or for something, and it's only on reflection where you see that. And I think one of the things for us to do is to use the body of parents who are so valuable to us as a community group, where we can actually serve our demographic, serve our population, and make sure we're working together. So if you have any thoughts about, I know I've put you on the spot now, this is what we do in class, you know, we put children on the spot for answering, put their hands up, quick questions. If you didn't want to put that in the chat function about what diversity, inclusion and equality means to you, please do feel free to email it to us, because I think what we'd like to do is to actually gather some information from the end of the evening that we can compile and use for future events and future evenings. I thought this was really interesting diagram here, just showing the things that we often, that waterline of visibility, the things that we're often looking to people. I was listening to a podcast about recruitment, and it said that actually the minute somebody walks in the door, that line of visibility above that waterline is what you're judging people on. And actually what we so often forget is what is underneath. We talk a lot to the children about that iceberg moment and what they see on top and what's going on underneath. But actually, when you truly think about the characteristics, personality traits, events, humour, all of that lies beneath is actually the things that mould your individual children and mould us as adults. And so often we're making judgments above that waterline. And I think that's where our job comes in, and yours alongside us. So what does it mean to us, and why now? There are some pretty hard-hitting statistics from a safeguarding perspective. I don't know how many of you are aware, but there was a website in the last 12 months called Everyone's Invited that has gone across the school world. Thousands of people have given their own testimonials on this website, and it's about consent and it's about harassment, and it's mostly to do with gender, but there are other issues as well. It's quite shocking, and from our perspective, the safeguarding training that we're having now is very different from the safeguarding training that we were having 10 years ago. And I think it's about us wakening up the community and getting on board with that. So lots of the discussions that we will be having with your girls and boys at this stage is, yes, about those early things. Of course, we're not going to be talking to a 5, 6 and 7-year-old about sexual consent, but we can be talking to them about consent. What is consent? Actually, am I allowed to touch your pencil case? No, not really, unless you told me I can. There is it's about the terminology, and it's about them starting to understand that as we go further down the line. So it is very much around safeguarding and looking at those children of today and making sure that, yes, we haven't got time to waste. We need to help them. So John Coles, when he spoke at one of our training sessions a couple of weeks ago, had a really interesting comment to make about the past 2 years, and he said, actually, your children in schools have done their national service. They have, this is equivalent to their national service. They are, it is not dissimilar to, they have not been at risk in the same way that we have as adults or the elderly, but actually they have done their national service, and it's time for us to catch up. So part of that is about future proofing and looking at those skills, and we talk about that a lot when we're curriculum building. We're talking about the future of the curriculum, but where we need to head those skills, that character, the personalities, all of those decision making, problem solving that aids their future. It's also about the fact that we're passionate about this. We're passionate about making sure that we're going to get it right for your children. And actually, who can tell us better than you about us getting it right? So we want you on board. We want to be part of a working group together. And that group will splinter off, and I'll come to that a little bit further down the line. Children are tipping the balance. What do I mean by that? Children are absolutely tipping the balance. They are incredibly talented. They are incredibly knowledgeable about issues that children would not have been knowledgeable about many years ago. And they are, I mean, about global issues, about the environment, about sustainability, about equality. They are absolutely unbelievably talented at being able to take away all the rest of the media frenzy and leave some clarity behind, and we need to learn from them. But because they're at that tipping point, we need to keep up, and we need to make sure that we are also ahead of the game with them. Diverse needs. One of the things that I'm going to talk a little bit about in a minute is the fact that actually in any across the board, independent, state, national statistics show that between 20 and 25% of children have some sort of additional need. Now that sounds quite shocking, that almost a quarter of us have an additional need, but actually if you look around the room when you're sat in the office, when you ever get back to the office, when you're sat around the office, look around the room, and you will be able to see people who actually do in their work life, you know, they probably have some sort of additional need or have had in the past. And I think it's, again, that awakening, about waking up to that. You'll know that in the last 2 weeks, there's been a huge push for in the ASD, the autism world, about having autistic adults who will be role models for autistic children. But actually, lots of our autistic adults were never diagnosed and actually don't feel quite the same passion about being diagnosed at 40 as we can do with your children. But actually, they need those role models, because you'll perhaps have seen Melanie Sykes and I can't remember her name, Paddy McGuinness's partner. She has just come out. They've both come out as just being diagnosed with ASD in their adult life, and probably through their children. And I know plenty of adults that I have spoken to over the years who very often sat in my office and I'm saying, look, I think your son or daughter has dyslexic tendencies. Oh yeah, well, I'm dyslexic. Or, oh yeah, well, we have ASD in the family. And it comes down the line quite often, and it is about an opening up and just being transparent about it. There's nothing shameful about any of these things. It's actually about us just looking at each other and tailor making. We talk about tailor making our curriculum. You cannot tailor make it until you know your children really well, and that's what we're heading to. The curriculum demands are great. So if any of you are in the education world, you will know that the personal, social and emotional aspects, particularly since COVID actually, but for probably 10 years have been at the top of the agenda. There's lots of funding has gone into it from the government, but actually it's about your son or daughter's well-being and how we can best help them in their emotional development. But it's also about religion and how we focus on different religions, how we give them an opportunity to think for themselves, because that's really important, and that we don't just give them, dump them with information, that we actually give them an opportunity to have an opinion and to think things through and to actually discuss those points, those finer points. They're actually pretty amazing at that. But also the relationships and sex education has come much further down now. It's not just looking at 13 to 15-year-olds or even in year 6. It's actually coming much further down in the curriculum. And as I say, it's not about the finer details necessarily, but it's about making sure that your vocabulary is the same and leads in. And we need you on side for that too. I don't think there's ever been a time in history where children have been exposed to global issues in the same way as they have in the last 2 years. I have heard children in the last 2 years, if you think that a lot of their time has been spent at home doing home learning, I've heard children talk about Brexit, I've heard children talk about Donald Trump, I've heard them talk about COVID and SAGE and what are the government doing. I don't think there has been ever a period of time in history that children have been so aware of those global issues, and just recently, obviously, in global awareness and sustainability, more recently, which is a brilliant thing, but it's actually that we all need to get on board with that. And I think we're at a really strong juxtaposition here where we are actually at the point where they're very informed, but are they very informed in an equal way? And again, it's about us working together on that. I've introduced the staff that are involved. And the last thing on that slide is about the common language. I think it's really important across gender, sexuality, race, culture, religion, that we have the right language and that we're all using that shared language with each other, and that is the language that is also being used at home too. And those are the types of things that it would be really nice to get out of evenings like tonight. So I just want to focus just for 5 minutes on a project that we've taken across both preps. We took the decision 2 years ago to recruit a head of preps across both schools and to streamline what we offered in terms of additional needs. We looked at the statistics I've just told you, 25% historically, and many of you will have heard me say, historically in the independent sector, you may have a learning enrichment department that dealt with low-level dyslexic children. Well, actually, that's just benchmarking children into one particular area, one particular space too. Actually, the girls' prep has a different pulse of when we've looked at the demographic across the board about the learning needs. They have a slightly different cohort than we have across at the boys' prep, and you know, it will go like that, even though we're in the same area. It will absolutely go like that. And it's about making sure we're recognising that. So we now have a WAVE document which works across Mrs. Johnson and Mr. Williams, devised this right at the beginning of, in fact, probably just as lockdown was happening. And we've used this for our SEND as well. So WAVE 1 to 4, everybody's tracked, we all know where we're up to, but you do too. So you are very much shared in that provision. And I think that's the transparency in that triangle approach is so important. But the peer acknowledgement, so we've worked really hard on actually making sure that children are aware. So actually what does, we did a mentoring session with year 6 just last week about neurodiversity. One of our boys has stood up and presented about him and the fact that he has autism, and he's explained it to the rest of the class. Actually, the power of peers being on board. We have some incredible children amongst us in the girls and boys prep who are really understanding of each other, and everybody needs to get on board with that. I think never has there been a time where may love always lead us needs to rule more. So that is still ongoing, but we're really delighted with how that project has started and means to go on, and we see a much more streamlined approach. So some children having Lego therapy, some children having social and emotional support, some children having dyslexic support, some having ASD support. There's a real scope for children to be recognised for their individual needs and what that tailor-made curriculum looks like for them. So what's happening here? I'm going to hand you over to Miss Parks first, just to tell you what's been happening here at the boys, and then over to Miss Doherty to explain what's been happening at the girls.
Okay, good evening everyone. So we've worked really hard over the last year to create more experiences for the boys and to make our curriculum really diverse and inclusive. And Black History Month in particular really lended itself towards that, because we had 2 really good focuses. Last year we celebrated Black voices, and the boys were able to research lots of Black people in history that have made a significant contribution towards Great Britain. And I think this year especially was really good, because the theme was called Proud to Be, and it gave the boys an opportunity to talk about their own heritage and share that with the other boys. So that was something that was really special, because we got to know the boys a lot more and find out more about what they were like and the religion and the languages that they speak. So it was a theme that really resonated with a lot of the boys at our school. So Black History Month, it's something that we're going to continue to celebrate across the prep schools and relate it to our own cultural heritage as well. So speaking of cultural heritage, the parent questionnaire, so thank you to everybody that took part in that, because it really gave us a clearer picture of the diversity at our school. And I've had a look at the data as well, and you can see on the screen that actually we have quite a good mixture, and we're quite a diverse school. Comparing it to Kingston's statistics, which is about 66% white. In our school, we have 52% white. So actually, we're quite diverse, and we have a higher percentage of Asian pupils compared to Kingston. So when you look beneath the surface and dig deeper, actually, we have quite a diverse school, and that's something that we really want to celebrate. So drawing on that, and Black History Month, we've created lots of cultural opportunities for the boys. They've had African dance workshops, a Nigerian talk with parents, and it's really wonderful when parents can get involved to share their heritage with us as well. So we've had Diwali talks also. And more recently, we're working on a project where we are collaborating with the school in Ghana, just to learn more about what life is like in Ghana for children and how we can relate that to our own experiences. So that's something that we've been working on recently. And one of the most important things as well is representation. So we've had a really lovely delivery of books in our library that offers a range of diverse and inclusive texts where the boys can actually, and boys and girls can see themselves represented within these texts, and which gives them a more personal experience. When they go into their book corners, they can pick up books where they see themselves, and that's something that's really important to us. We are working with Book Trust Represents, which aims to promote Black authors. And recently, Year 5 and 6 have been able to have an author visit, although it was virtual. This was something that was also really welcomed as well. And within our PRS curriculum, we have lots of visits to religious places of worship. So that's something that we're going to continue to do. And we also had the pleasure of having Black Voices visit our school, both the boys and girls, and that we were able to take part in a workshop. Which actually is a really, really amazing experience to have and to be a part of that. We were really lucky. And when we delve deeper, the curriculum is something that we really want to work on, and it's going to take time. But just by starting by looking at the books that we are using with our English lessons and humanities, making sure that when we look at history, it's history of all cultures, and so that's something that we're working towards, and we've already made great strides in. And I just want to show you a few pictures of what we've been up to. So I hope this parent doesn't mind that I put this picture here of our Nigerian talk. And this was last year, and it was absolutely amazing that in the height of a pandemic, we could still have such an amazing experience. So technology has really served us well over the last couple of years. We've had some independent projects as well from the boys. Black History Month gave them ownership of creating their own fact files. As you can see, there's an African dance workshop on the screen there. Year 5 did that as well, and we hope to continue with that as well to make sure that it's not just a tokenistic and one-off event, but it's something that we can embed throughout the curriculum as a whole. Yeah, so much more things to look forward to in the next coming years. Yeah. Thank you.
Over to you, Ms. Doherty.
Thank you. Good evening. Lovely to have everybody here, and thank you for your time this evening. So very similar to what the boys have been doing, we've been working closely to make sure that we are sort of in sync with everybody. But at the girls, again, the Black History Month assemblies, just heightening that awareness. And as we say, last year went incredibly well, and this year as well. And I think we're very aware of not making it a tokenistic gesture, as Ms. Parks said, but continuing that yearly and spreading it throughout the curriculum, not just having a standalone month where we celebrate all of the incredible, inspirational Black men and women, but making sure that that is a through line throughout the year. We were lucky enough to have some poetry workshops for Key Stage 2, which looked at Black History Month, and the children wrote some cinquains, which was our 5-line structure with our syllables, and they just created some incredible work. And I think it's just getting them to think, to collaborate, to talk, and just heightening their awareness. We have, again for Key Stage 2, weekly Showbie content, which we put out on a Monday, and the children can access throughout the week. And it really depends what we want to focus on sort of that week. It may well be something that a child has come to us and said, can we talk about this? Or similarly, it could be that something is happening in the world, and we think that the children really should know about it, and should be discussing it and talking about it. So that content goes out possibly in video form. It could be that we share a picture and get them to think about their thoughts and their ideas, but that is on Showbie. And again, as Ms. Park said, a really great resource, having technology and something that can really sort of connect everybody together, especially at a time where obviously at the moment it's quite tricky for everybody to get together in person. We also at the Girls Prep have had some dance workshops, and we have done some Diwali inspired Indian dancing, which was really, really great. Obviously celebrating different celebrations for different cultures. Also with our book sharing. So I've got a really lovely range of books in my classroom that cater to lots of different cultures, different races, different religions. And we've been doing some book sharing with Key Stage 1. So they are able to have a look and a listen. And again, we're sort of, as Mrs. Chong was saying, that we don't want it to just be a specific age that we talk about specific things, but really starting it younger in Key Stage 1 to get them thinking, and then we're spreading it and they're aware of it as they come up through the different year groups. We had a really lovely talk with Atanuke, which was Too Small Toller, a book that we were focusing on in Year 3. And again, unfortunately, that was virtual, but it was lovely to not miss out on the important things that are happening. But it was really lovely just to hear all about her culture, and the book is set in Nigeria. And her really lovely accent that came through when we were lucky enough to hear a little bit of that book being read out. Something that we've recently started and that has been going on incredibly well is having equality ambassadors in Key Stage 2. So from Years 3 to Year 6, I've got an ambassador in each class, so 2 per year group. And we meet not weekly, sorry, but we meet every so often, sort of every 2 or 3 weeks. And it's just really great to get the girls' feedback and pupil voice on how they feel that we as teachers and the staff body are doing in terms of spreading diversity and inclusion and that awareness. So it's been really lovely to hear their thoughts and their feelings, and also just to draw on inspiration from them. Quite often they'll come into the sessions with me and say, oh, you know, this has happened, I saw this on Newsround, please can we talk about this? And it's a real great talking point for me to say, of course, it's great, you know, let's have a look, let's see what resources we can find, and let's then put that out onto Showbie on a Monday for the rest of the girls to have a little look at. So again, it's taking pupil voice and making sure that they feel heard and that they feel that they're part of this, this idea that we have. We also have our travelling bears, which go out at sort of during the holidays, so not every half term, but normally around Christmas. They go out at Easter and also the summer holidays. And obviously with that, the bears get to travel to lots of exciting different places all around the world with the girls that take them to these places. So it's really lovely again for them to think about culture, to think about maybe the languages that are spoken in these countries. And again, it just sparks conversation. And once the girls have taken the bears, they take pictures, they come back and they sort of share those posters or ideas with the rest of the school. So again, it's a really nice talking point, and again, for taking pupil feedback and pupil ideas. We celebrate across both schools, the boys and the girls, the International Week of Languages, a really lovely chance for the girls and boys to dress up, to try some traditional foods. Our canteen staff are fantastic and our catering staff, and we try lots of different foods, whether it be sort of noodles and stir fries from an Asian sort of inspired, or whether it's we had sort of hot dogs and things like that. So a real sort of different cultures. We want to kind of really immerse them, not just within the classrooms, but within school in general, into lots of different traditional dress and traditional food. We were lucky enough, as Miss Park said, to have the singing workshop and that was just incredible to hear the girls all coming together, and just some really beautiful songs that they were singing, and again really immersing themselves and linking that within the curriculum. We also taught, that this was last year for Black History Month, but a lullaby to our Year 3 girls, and again that was just really lovely for them to try something a little bit different, and for us to see and get to know them in a bit of a different light. And similarly to the boys, with our religious places of worship, we have trips and visits when we can. Obviously at the moment things are a little bit on hold, but they will continue throughout the years, and again really immersing the boys and girls within different cultures and religions. Thank you. Ooh. Thank you very much. So lots there that I was talking about lends itself to Key Stage 2, and we're not forgetting about Key Stage 1. As we said, we really want to immerse the children from a young age, talking about age appropriate things, but really getting them used to that language. And you may well see some familiar faces here. We've got Ben from CBeebies up the top left, and Mr. Tumble. We use a lot of the videos that are already out there. I think we're trying to be sort of smarter at not reinventing the wheel, but that idea, resources that are out there, good quality resources that talk about a real range of topics. And these faces, Ben and Mr. Tumble, lots of your children will already be familiar with. And I think we're very aware of letting them see people that they already know, things that they're sort of they enjoy watching, but really having that focus. So about Ben, the character at the top, so the gentleman at the top, talks about his family heritage, and where he comes from, and how his family have helped to build him and create him and develop him into who he is today. And just that idea that your family are so important in doing that. That lent itself really nicely to, as Miss Park said, the Proud to Be theme that surrounded Black History Month. And we really got the girls to think about who it is that they are and how their family have helped to make them into who they are today. And quickly about Mr. Tumble, he uses Makaton in lots of his videos, and that's something that I introduced to the girls very recently, but thinking about how we communicate with one another and how different people communicate in different ways. And that we are all different, but that's absolutely fantastic. So using that Mr. Tumble video, we then put up a few videos and allowed the girls to learn a little bit of Makaton. Mr. Ray over here, head of music, taught us and went through some sign language as well. So really just immersing the girls in sort of little snippets, but just introducing them to these ideas, and just letting them know that we are all different, but actually that is really fantastic. Thank you, Mrs. Chong. Next. And again, with our positive representation, as Miss Park said, it is incredibly important for our boys and girls to be able to pick up a book and see somebody who is similar to them, whether it's culturally, whether that's because of religion, whether it's that they look in terms of race and skin colour. We really want the boys and girls to have that positive representation, and just how important that is for them, for their self-esteem, for their confidence, for really building that within who it is that they are, and that they can be proud of who they are. So again, we were really lucky to have lots of money spent on some fantastic books in our libraries and our classrooms. It's filtering through. Now these pictures at the top are of my classroom and the books that I really, really love and have purchased, but we are filtering it through all of the classrooms, and we hope that we will keep doing that, and that every child will have a character or somebody that they can see positive representation for, and yeah, just feel really good about themselves and have that positive representation. And our last slide at the top, we've got our author visit that our girls really enjoyed with our Too Small Toddler book. In the bottom left, we've got some pupils with our International Week of Languages. We've got some traditional dress and some more sort of caricature fun dress, but just really understanding those different countries and the importance of understanding each other. And then on the right is just an example of what our Shobi group looks like. You will see at the bottom, we've got lots of different videos, positive representation. We've got a little bit of CBeebies there as well, but just a little bit of dialogue at the top from me, explaining what the task is. And then it's really over to the pupils for them to have their say, leave a comment, and have discussions. The most important part, some dialogue with their peers, but also with the teachers as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I need the thumbs up from John to know that I'm back on. I have. Thank you, John. Thank you to you both for all of that hard work. We have actually, between us, spent thousands of pounds on books and resources, and we're going to continue that. That will be part of our programme, certainly for the next 3 years in our strategic plan. So there's been a couple of questions, and a couple of them are probably require lengthier answers. Mrs. Johnson is sat in the background, bless her, taking them down for me because they don't stay. After the event, they don't stay, and she's going to put them into a shared area, which we will share with you and respond back to you with if we can't. If we don't have the chance to do all of that tonight. One of them is a really simple, straightforward one that I'm just going to answer quickly now, and entirely my fault. I have no idea why it went in the diary at 6:30, but I do agree it's not really an ideal time. Because it is recorded and the link will be sent, I do hope people will have the opportunity to see it and just to see what we're doing as our introductory event. But we will take that certainly on board for next time for a meeting. So what do we envisage could happen with this group? I've spoken to a few parents from the boys prep, and I haven't spoken to many at the girls prep, but we've had similar discussions across the staff that actually some parents will stop on the gate and we'll talk for ages about pedagogy and philosophy and our beliefs and education and what our children should be taught. And it's those times when I get truly excited about my profession and realise how exciting it is to move 27 years, I think, down the line now, but to be at this stage and still be totally excited and passionate about where we can move our curriculum and our learning for our children, which is kind of where I started with thinking, hold on, I'd like some of these people involved in a workshop, in a group where we look at that academic enrichment and those pedagogical beliefs in more depth, and actually may become more kind of debating opportunities, but discussion events where we're open. It's a safe place to have those discussions and we can facilitate those. But I don't see that that's relevant for everybody. And so I do understand, you know, I've had requests from some parents who say, you know, my child's autistic, and actually I'd love to talk to a mum or dad of a child who's autistic that's further down the line and has been diagnosed a long time ago, because there are things that we can learn from each other. And I think that could be a really powerful group. I know certainly something that I started in my old school really helped parents with that struggle and that additional needs, to find some common ground of how you can help your child. And obviously we're always here to help, but sometimes it is nice to share those moments together. English as an additional language, sharing a group maybe might need to be split. It might need to be a bigger group. I think we need your thoughts on that, actually, which is why we've opened a bespoke email address for this group, so that we can have your thoughts and ideas about how these groups might be split. You might want to have a group for specific religions. We might want a group to talk about race. We might want a culture group. We might want some gender, a discussion around gender. We might want to do everything together as a group, as a whole group, but I think it could be quite big. And what I'm thinking is actually we might be more powerful to have our splinter groups going off into smaller groups and then coming back, say, twice a year for perhaps some external speakers or some real discussion points that we've perhaps made in our splinter groups over that 6-month period, and we can share at those events. I see it as a work in progress so that it can evolve as you want it to evolve. I do not see it as an opportunity for us to quiz you or for you to quiz us. This is about us working together as a community. So we are opening up and saying we'd like you involved. And I think we need to be mindful of each other in that relationship. So that is where I would perhaps see it heading. This on the last slide here is the address for the email. So it's Prep School Inclusion at Surbiton High. I've had a question on this And I would really like, if you've got lots of further questions, sometimes people come to the end and they think they want to ask things and haven't quite got it in time. Please do feel free to email your questions to this address. Ms. Park, myself, Mrs. Johnson, Mr. Williams, all have, Ms. Doherty, all have access to this email, so we will be able to answer it where relevant. So if there are further questions, please do, or ideas. What I would like you to do in this email is to say, yes, I would be interested in joining English as an additional language group. Actually, I would really like a group on social mobility. I would actually really like a group on what we do with charitable, how we work with our charities. It would really be useful for you to gain. I don't want to be specifying the groups. I'd far rather you be coming up with those ideas and us then look at some common themes. Somebody's asking me about the inclusive environment, and I actually, interestingly, was talking to a parent on the gate just yesterday. It actually might have been this morning. It just feels like it was yesterday. And we were talking about that opportunity of having absolute zero tolerance on behaviour that is not about that kindness, and that may love always lead us, where you are being, whether it's an innocent remark or not, that should not be acceptable. And we do need to make sure that we have a zero tolerance on that. One of the things that we also talked about, and we've talked about with the children, is actually if you are aware of somebody else making comments to their friend or their someone in another year group, or being unkind to somebody, and making judgments and bias against them, you are complicit if you do not say something yourself. And so we say to the children, actually, that's unacceptable. So whilst you wouldn't be in trouble, but actually it's your duty. It's just the same way that from a safeguarding perspective, every single member of the school community is, it's their responsibility to bring forward safeguarding issues, and it is actually your responsibility to whistleblow. So we don't use that term with the children, but we talk about being complicit, and we talk about that joint ownership and making sure that actually if you're allowing that friend to say that to somebody else, you are actually, although you're not the one saying it, you're allowing it to happen, and we have to call that out. I think for too long, over too many years, that has been acceptable, and it is that opportunity to call those things out, and we need your help with that. We're not going to get it right every time, and as I'm sure you will have experienced yourselves, and we want to work together on that for sure. So moving on from this point, if I can ask that, I'm hoping that it's not just 20 attendees that are on the evening, which is what it says in my top corner. I would hope that there's a few more of you, because there were lots of people certainly that replied on our online reply to say that they were certainly interested. And at least if they haven't watched our live event today, I would hope that they might see the recording. I think what I'd like to think is that over the Christmas period, you'd have an opportunity to think about how you could foresee this working. It may be that our groups turn out to be quite big and we might split girls prep and boys prep. It might be that some of the groups come across both preps. It will probably require a serious amount of organisation, but we'd like to get that right, but we'd like to not stipulate ourselves. So if you could very much give us those ideas, that would be brilliant. If you are want to suggest either an outside speaker or an event that we could do, that would be amazing too. Or if you just have an opinion about how we could do it better, or you want to be involved in how we deliver it to the children, we'd be really grateful for your thoughts and your ideas. I don't think, Mrs. Johnson, am I right in thinking that there I've just come further down. Is there anything that you would like to ask, Mrs. Johnson, that you've seen come in?
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can. A couple of questions have come in, and actually they're all really good questions. And I think, as you've just mentioned, Mrs. Chong, more detail is definitely required in answering some of these pertinent and very important questions. one question that came through, which said, all great content, but what do you actually want from the parent community? Is this one group across both schools? Is this prep only? The subtopics are great, but I wonder whether grouping so many of these together rather undermines how serious some of these are, for example, race and gender.
I think that's really, I absolutely agree with that. I absolutely agree with that, and that's kind of why I wondered whether, I mean, originally, if I'm really honest, before we sent out the online reply, I originally thought we would have a group of perhaps 20 parents involved in the boys prep, 20 parents involved in the girls prep, and it would be a much smaller group that we would address all of those issues together. So I absolutely agree with you. I worry about the grouping entirely, because aren't we actually doing exactly the opposite of what we would like to achieve? So I do worry about that. But I am trying to take the lead from some of the parents who have said, well, actually, I'd like to be involved in an additional needs group and get the support from other parents. And that might be that that's quite a separate group. I don't know. I think I would see that twice a year or maybe once a term, we would definitely all be together. And then maybe if you were wanting to splinter groups off, we could do that. We could facilitate that. But actually, that might be that that's more to do with you setting up those groups. I think all I'm wanting really at the moment is for you just to see where we're up to with it, and to actually offer a thought out if you've got any thoughts about how we could do it better. It's not for the senior schools at the moment. Senior school also has inclusion and diversity on their plan for the next 3 years, but they have a different strategy of development, obviously with some different issues as well. We were envisaging that some of it could be done across the preps, yes, but I do think, again, maybe it is that actually the subtopics are too great, and maybe we should come together as a group, but maybe in the separate preps. I think we need to know from your feedback about how much interest and what you would want to be involved in, really. And you've already highlighted that you'd like to be involved, but in terms of drilling down what that would look like. And I have had some conversations, really good conversations with people on the gate about that. So I think it's just about getting that down. And from a GDPR perspective, I need you to put it into an email so that I have that content there. And there's a question there about, I can see, about unconscious bias. And I think that's something that we have had some training on. Certainly from a safer recruitment perspective, we've had unconscious bias training. I think it's a massive topic. I think it's something that you cannot quite read enough about at the moment. And I think it is absolutely something that we certainly talk to the boys about in our PSHE lessons. There is a whole section on unconscious bias. But if we, as I said at the beginning, I think it's a really good opportunity for us to discuss it as a bigger, wider community, because your experiences will have been different than ours. Mrs. Johnson, are there any further questions?
Yes, there was one question further up to the top, where someone has asked, while diversity can be easily measured, building an inclusive environment, school culture is more critical and definitely more difficult long-term in nature. What steps are the school taking to building this inclusive culture? And I think you've touched upon many of those points. And as you said, this is, organic for us and something that we are continually growing and understanding and putting measures in place to ensure we get it right from the beginning.
Yes, thank you. And I hope I have touched on that. I think, first of all, we're looking at making sure that common language is right and that we're all using correct terminology and getting the vocabulary and the diction going. And I think that's where I also see parents being really useful and very involved in. And that might be the first sort of event we do as a workshop together if people were interested in doing that. It might be that, I mean, I'm just thinking on my feet here now, that those subtopics aren't subtopics, and that actually we just have agendas for each meeting that you either want to attend or you don't, and maybe that's more powerful as a whole community group. Thank you so much for joining. I am so sorry that it was at 6:30 and you're probably crossing over bedtime. We will endeavour to make it later next time. And actually, if you want to put down in the email to what times are better for these events. Some parents do prefer them earlier, but actually I think most people prefer it after bedtime. So please do highlight that in the email. Please test out the email, give us your thoughts, give us your ideas, send us some links of things. We're really happy to take it on, and we can obviously reciprocate. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you to staff for all of their time this evening and for all of the effort going into this project. I'm really looking forward to this being us. Thank you, John.